We've gone wild before, but today we are going nuts. Hey everyone, I'm Sigi, and while I still love all things poor, I've been branching out a bit lately. In that vein, today we are once again not drinking poor, but a different type of Hei Cha, or post-fermented tea. What I'm drinking today is the Betel Nut Liubao. Now, I've never had Liubao before. I have a general idea of what it is. To give you all a short summary, Liubao in essence is a fermented tea from the Guangxi province in China. And most of you have probably seen these sort of big baskets of tea. There's smaller ones like 500 grams, but there's also ones that have like 30 kilograms of tea in it. That's how Liubao is commonly stored or sold, in these big baskets with lots of tea. What else is there to say? Yeah, so this Betel Nut Liubao that I'm trying today, take a quick look here. In the meantime, I'm already preheating my gaiwan, so we're basically good to go. This tea was produced by the Guangxi Wuzhou Tea Factory, one of the largest producers of Liubao in general. In particular, by the Sanhe brand, or Three Cranes, for those of you that already might have come across that before. Now, what's so special about this particular tea? As I've already mentioned, it's a betel nut aroma. In Chinese, I think it's Bin Lang Xiang Liubao, which involves a special production technique that is supposed to give the tea a distinct nutty flavor. So that's one thing we're going to be looking for today when we try this tea. What else can I say about this tea in particular? It was made and produced in 2015, if I recall correctly, and then stored by the factory for 4 years before being released to the public. So this went onto the market in 2019. You can also find, as always, more information about this particular tea, as well as some of Dimitri's wonderful impressions over on the website and the page for this particular tea, which you can of course find in the description of this video. It's sold for 13 euros for 20 grams or 45 euros for 100 grams. Now, what's the first thing I noticed about this tea? I just gave the lid a little smell. And I have to say, this smell is kind of familiar because I've been drinking a lot of traditional storage Shangpur lately. And this kind of has something in there that's comparable in terms of, let's call it like storage or fermentation flavors. Okay, gonna give this one a quick rinse, and then let's go a bit more in depth on the aroma of this tea. Yeah, it definitely has these kind of storage-y aromas that you can find in traditional stored tea or in some shupur even. Which, I mean, makes sense. This is a fermented tea, so you're gonna find those kind of smells in there. But there's also a certain kind of sweetness to it. Hard to describe what exactly it is. Kind of reminds me of like maybe a sweet wood or something in that vein. Maybe a bit of incense even. Okay. Enough about the smell. Let's give this a try. First steep going in. Gonna let this sit for a quick moment before I pour it out. And yeah, what kind of experiences have you all made with, let's say, non-pu'er Hei Cha? There's a lot of it out there, and it feels like a world that's kind of underexplored in the Western tea scene, so to speak. From my perspective, many people tend to be focused on, well, pu'er tea, of course, myself included, and oolong tea on the other side. But other Hei Cha can be a little forgotten in that whole equation. And if we look across all of China, there are so many different types of Hei Cha that it seems like an entire world that's worth exploring on its own. Okay. So I just finished the first steep. I'm gonna try to show this to you here if it's possible. As you can see, this is quite dark, sort of brownish with maybe a slight tinge of red, which is about what you'd expect from a fermented tea, right? Because there's some shu that looks like this. Traditional stored tea also tends to go in this kind of direction, so nothing particularly new on that front. Okay, let's pour this into my cup here. I'm really curious about this kind of betel nut flavor. Betel nut is not something that I've ever eaten. If it really is a nutty flavor, then I think we'll find out quite quickly whether it's in this tea or not. Other teas with nutty flavors that some of you may be familiar with are Longjing is often known for a kind of nutty taste. It can often be described from something like roasted soybeans to chestnuts, or even something like roasted hazelnuts if you want to get extravagant. And there's also a Shangpu'er, the Liming Gaoshan Gushu, I think, from 2005 or 2006 that I've tried before, that also has a very distinct note of walnut for some reason. Very interesting tea for sure. Let's see if we can find a nutty taste in this tea, and if so, if it reminds me of anything I've had before. Cheers. Okay, that was very quick. So, right as the tea enters your mouth, you are instantly hit with that nutty flavor. There's no mistaking, no two ways about it. This tea tastes very, very nutty. But you know what? That's good. I like it. I actually like it quite a lot. Flavor-wise, the closest I'd say is probably that Shangpu'er that I've mentioned that tasted kind of like walnuts. That's the closest nutty flavor to this one that I can think of. Obviously, those of you that have had betel nut will likely recognize this as that, I'd imagine, because it is still significantly different from walnut. It's just kind of the closest one I can think of. Yeah. And then another note that's present here is one of those flavors that I also tend to come across a fair bit in those traditional stored shunks I've been drinking, which is a kind of something between woodiness and an incense-like taste. very nice. Especially because this tea has like a bit of sweetness underneath it. So there's kind of 3 layers to this from what I can discern right now. There's the aroma with the nutty flavor and some of that incense stuff. There's a layer of sweetness underneath that. And then after that, you get like a bit of bitterness, which kind of combines with that nutty flavor into something that gives you the impression of those kinds of bits of skin you'd find on like a peanut or a walnut or an almond, something like that. Gonna pour in the second steep now while I finish this first one. Very interesting tea so far. For this second steep, I'm going to try to focus a bit more on texture because, speaking from personal experience with traditional stored tea, shang, which I feel is, at least relatively speaking, the closest to Hei Cha compared to other types of tea. Not just the flavor of the tea, but the texture of it is also quite important. So let's take a look at what this tea does in terms of texture for our second steep. All right. Color stays quite consistent. I'd say it's gotten a bit fuller on the second steep, which is unsurprising. In case you're wondering, I am not really used to using filters since I mainly drink pu'er tea with a teapot that kind of automatically filters for me. So I kind of just decant into my pitcher and then let the particles sediment down there and like toss them out right at the end. That's why you always see me doing this after I decant my steep. Okay. Betel Nut Liubao, second steep. Let's see what this does. Oh, the betel nut flavor on this steep is getting even stronger. And I'm also getting a bit more of that bitterness now, but let's try to pay more attention to the texture. Very smooth, for sure. There's no discernible astringency to this one, like whatsoever. Now that with this steep, obviously you're getting more bitterness afterwards, but astringency, there's still no astringency whatsoever. And this doesn't really coat your mouth much either. You can kind of swish it around nicely, aerate it a bit and whatnot. It moves through your mouth and down your throat in a very smooth way, which I think is a good thing because that's kind of the texture you're going for with some of these fermented teas. Certainly nice in that way. It leaves a pleasant aftertaste in the mouth where the sweet layer of it combines with that bitterness. Yeah, this is nice. I'm pleasantly surprised, I'd say. Like, Liubao is admittedly not something I've spent much time thinking about in the past. Obviously, this is mainly due to my own fault because I'm just very much hyper-focused on pu'er, but I appreciate being given the ability to do these videos to, sort of branch out a bit, because obviously there's a lot of interesting tea out there, and I'm not sure if I ever would have been like able to try stuff like this if it weren't for either good friends that want to introduce me to stuff, or Gabriele, who of course is also a good friend, but asking me to do more of a variety of things for this YouTube channel. Okay, that was the second steep. So now we know what kind of the base flavor is. Now we kind of know how the flavor develops across these two steeps, and we've learned a bit about the texture. All in all, good stuff so far. I'm gonna do one more steep here for the video to sort of let you all know what it's like when this tea goes a little bit further. But I think after that, that's gonna kind of be all I have to say about this tea. Very pleasantly surprised. Cool stuff. Definitely do give it a try. I think certainly if you haven't tried Liubao before, like me, give this a try. Maybe compare it to other things you've had before. Maybe a shu pu'er, maybe a traditional stored shang pu'er, if you have any of those. Kind of see where the differences are there. See what's similar. Maybe compare it to some other Hei Cha as well. Because, like, one of the few other Hei Cha I've had is Fujuan. And that one, at least from what I can remember, is actually quite different from this one. Okay. Steep should be ready any moment. Yeah. And as always, if you enjoy what I'm doing here, if you enjoy me sort of branching out and trying things for the first time here on this channel and not just constantly talking about pu'er tea, then please, as always, let me know in the comments. I read those, I respond whenever I can. And if you're new to the channel as a whole and you like tea, or you want to start liking tea, I highly recommend subscribing, watching a bunch of videos. You'll be able to see me and a couple of other ones. You'll be able to see a lot of Gabriele. He always provides a lot of useful wisdom on here. And of course, if there's somebody else you want to introduce to Liubao, then feel free to send them this video and give them some first impressions, if you will. Okay, so here's the third steep. The tea got darker again. No real surprise there. I kind of let it steep for quite a while to get sort of maximum flavor, maximum texture out of this one in particular. It's going to be interesting to see whether this turns astringent, for example, or if anything else happens. Yeah, this is quite remarkable, not gonna lie. Like, I pushed this quite hard, and there's still just zero stringency. The bitterness is creeping up more now, which is quite noteworthy, but still, like, this isn't really drying out my mouth at all. My tongue doesn't feel pelty whatsoever. The texture is still as smooth as ever, and those three distinct layers of flavor are still present. Yeah. There's really not much more to say at this point. This is a nice tea. Do give it a try when you can. Let's broaden our horizons a little bit. Okay, one more sip. Nice. This is good. Yeah. I could actually see this being a rather comfortable tea to kind of drink on the side, if that makes sense. Like if you're doing something, because as we just saw, this tea isn't particularly strict when it comes to how you steep it. So it's probably fine if you forget about it for a little bit before you decant. You don't kind of have to stick to a strict steeping schedule or anything like that. And it has a very pleasant flavor. It's not like overwhelming in any way. It's got good texture, so this might be a good tea that can sort of stick around with you during, let's say, a work day or when you have to study and you just kind of want something warm and comforting on the side. Yeah, that seems like a great place for this tea. So yeah, that concludes my impressions of the Betel Nut Liubao. Again, if you're interested in this tea, check the description below. I'm Sigi. I hope you enjoyed what you saw here today, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. Goodbye.